What's the strangest thing a stranger has ever handed you? A waitress set down my check, and folded inside it was a note in shaky handwriting that said, "When I leave this table, start screaming, we will do the rest. You are not the first." I almost did not go on the date at all. Grant looked good on paper and better in his messages, and he booked a steakhouse that cost more than my car payment, so I told myself I was being silly to hesitate. He was already at the table when I arrived. "I ordered for you," he said, before I had even sat down. "The filet. You will thank me. I do not eat red meat, but I let it slide because it was a first date, and I did not want to be the difficult one. That was my first mistake, deciding not to be difficult." For the next hour, he did all the talking, refilled my wine before I asked, and gave a tight little smile every time I mentioned my own life, as if my words were interrupting his. When I said I had an early morning, he waved it off. "We are just getting started. I did not book the best table here for 40 minutes. He had taken my keys at the door too, plucked them right out of my hand. "Valet," he said. "Let me be a gentleman." I had not seen a valet stand, but I told myself things were different downtown. Then the waitress came with a check I had not asked for, set it by my hand, and walked off without a word. Inside the folder, folded small, was a note pressed so hard into the paper the pen had nearly torn it. It said, "When I leave this table, start screaming, we will do the rest. You are not the first." I read it twice and did not move, because part of me still wanted the boring answer to be true, so I tested it. "I really do have to go," I said, and reached for my purse. "Let me grab my keys from the valet." Grant put his hand flat over mine on the table, not hard, only heavy, a man telling you something without saying it. "Sit down," he said, and the charm went out of his voice like a switch had been flipped. "I spent $300 on this dinner. You are not going to embarrass me by running off before dessert like some scared little girl. The valet has your keys, and he is a friend of mine, so let us relax." That was the whole answer in one breath. He believed a steak had bought him the rest of me. The note was right, so I screamed, loud and ragged, the kind a room cannot pretend it did not hear. What happened next happened fast, and plainly not for the first time. 2 line cooks came through the service doors before I finished the first breath. The hostess already had a phone to her ear. June, the one who left the note, was at my side with an arm around my shoulders, steering me toward the back. "You are okay. Up and walking. We have got you. Keep moving." Behind me, I could hear Grant's voice climbing. "What is wrong with her? She is hysterical. I did not do anything. Do you know who I am?" They put me in a small back office with a bottle of water and a door that locked. June crouched in front of me. "My keys," I said. He took my keys. "They are already in my apron." He handed them to the hostess on the way in, like a tip, so the girl cannot just walk out. That is his routine. The way she said routine landed on me like a stone. He has done this before. Every few weeks with someone new. The first time I saw it, I was too slow, and a girl left with him because she was too polite to make a scene. She came back a week later and asked me to please do something if I ever saw it again. So now we do. You screaming is the only thing that gives us the right to step between him and you in our own building. Here is the part Grant never once considered. All night he had looked straight through June like furniture. He snapped his fingers at her, sent his water back twice, never thanked her, never once looked at her face long enough to remember it. Every person in that building who was not me, he treated like a thing he could use, and the things had been watching him the whole time. The man who thought he was the smartest one in the room had been studied for months by the only person he refused to see. Out front, Grant was still performing, loud and insulted through the wall, demanding the manager, demanding I be brought out to apologize, telling a room full of strangers he was the real victim. He believed every word of it. In his head, he had done nothing but buy a dinner, and a dinner was a contract, and I had broken it. The police officer showed up 10 minutes later. I cracked the office door and watched Grant shake the officer's hand near the hostess stand, like they were meeting at a golf course. The red face, the shouting, all of it was gone. In its place was someone steady and polite and a little embarrassed. "Officer, this is a misunderstanding. My date had too much wine, got emotional, and I think the staff overreacted. I feel terrible about the whole thing." He laughed a little, just enough, and the officer nodded, not agreeing exactly, but listening the way you listen to someone who sounds reasonable. I watched that nod and felt something start to slide, because Grant did sound reasonable. He sounded like the calm one, and I was the unnamed woman in the back who had screamed during dinner. And when you put those two things next to each other, I knew which one looked crazy. June sat down across from me and closed the door. "This is the part where he wins," she said, "unless you go out there and talk to them. He has talked his way out of this twice that I know of. He tells them the same story every time. Emotional girl, too much wine, he is the calm one. The only thing that changes the story is you, standing there, sober, with the note in your hand." Every part of me wanted to stay behind a locked door and let someone else handle it, but someone else handling it was exactly how he kept getting away with it. I also knew that walking out of that office meant standing in the same room as Grant again, and every muscle in me was still running on the memory of his hand on mine. I stood up anyway. I smoothed my shirt. I picked up the note and walked out through the back hallway and into the front of the restaurant. Grant saw me first. His face did something quick, a flash of something sharp that disappeared before the officer turned around, and then he was back to pleasant. I looked at the officer and kept my voice even, which was harder than screaming, honestly. He ordered my food without asking. He would not let me leave when I said I needed to go. But the main thing is that when I arrived, he took my car keys and gave them to the hostess so I could not walk out. He told me it was for the valet. There is no valet here. I held up the note. The waitress passed me this because she has seen him do this before. She had my keys in her apron because she already knew what he does with them. The officer took the note and read it. I watched his shoulders change, just a shift in weight, but real. He went from listening to paying attention, and those are two very different things. He turned to Grant. "Sir, can you tell me about the keys?" Grant's mouth opened and closed once before any words came out, and when they did, they were faster than before, a little higher. I was being polite. It was a gesture. I was going to get her car at the end of the night. I do it every time I take someone to dinner. It is called being a gentleman. The officer looked at the hostess, standing very still behind her stand. "Did he give you this woman's keys when they came in?" She nodded. "Sir, I am going to need you to leave the restaurant tonight. Do not contact this woman. Do you understand?" Grant's jaw tightened. I could see the effort it took to keep the mask on, the way his fingers curled at his sides and then flattened. "Of course, officer. This is all very silly, but I am happy to go." He walked toward the door, and on his way past June, he leaned close and said something low, right by her ear, something the officer could not hear, and no one in that room June could hear. 2 seconds. Then he straightened up and pushed through the door and walked out into the parking lot like a man leaving a business meeting. June stood there with her arms at her sides and her face completely flat. Then she turned and walked back through the service door. I followed her. She was standing by the dish station, and when she reached for a glass of water, her hands were shaking badly enough that she had to use both of them. What did he say? I asked. June shook her head. He always says something on the way out. Every time. It is supposed to make me stop. She said it like she had explained it to herself so many times the words did not mean anything anymore, but her hands were still shaking. The scream was not the end of anything. It was the beginning. Grant was not embarrassed. A man who is embarrassed goes home and does not come back. Grant was angry. Embarrassed means you got caught and you feel small. Angry means you got caught and you are already thinking about what to do about it. He had walked out like a man with a plan, and I was standing back there holding a note that said, "You are not the first," which meant somewhere out there, before me, there had been women who screamed and women who did not, and the ones who did not were the ones I could not stop thinking about. I drove home that night with every window up and the doors locked before I even pulled out of the parking lot. When I got to my apartment, I locked the front door, the deadbolt, and the chain, and stood there in my hallway with my keys still in my hand and my shoes still on, and just listened. I tried to go to bed around 11 but lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying the same moment over and over, the weight of Grant's hand pressing mine flat against the table, how my arm had known before my brain did, how every muscle in my body had tried to pull away a full second before I even understood what was happening. My body had been screaming the whole night, and I had spent the first hour telling it to be polite. 2 days later, I went back to the restaurant. June told me about Mia, the woman who had returned after her own date with Grant, and asked June to please do something if she ever saw him again. June said she would reach out and let Mia decide. That evening, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I did not recognize. "June gave me your number. I am glad you screamed." I did not. We met at a coffee shop the next morning. I got there first and sat in a corner where I could see the door, which is something I never used to do before that night but now do every time I sit down somewhere. Mia walked in put together. Nice jacket, like she had a meeting after this. And the first thing out of her mouth was, "How far did he get with the key thing?" No introduction, no small talk, just that. I told her. Mia nodded slowly, like checking items off a memorized list. He did the same thing to me, except I did not have a June. Nobody passed me a note. Nobody came out of the back. I sat there the whole dinner feeling like something was wrong and telling myself I was being dramatic. And when it was over, I left with him because I thought it would be ruder not to. I spent 6 weeks after that trying to convince myself it was a normal date. She looked back up at me. It was not a normal date. She said it flat, the way you say something you have had to talk yourself into believing even though you lived it. I sat there looking at this woman I had never met before last night's text message, and I realized that the system that saved me, the note, the scream, the cooks coming through the service doors, all of it, had been built by the person sitting across from me in a coffee shop drinking black coffee. Like this was just a Tuesday morning, and not the day I found out a stranger had saved my life before she even knew my name. She told me about going back to the